The shit libs are losing their mind over George Bush gave a speech. Now, I'm old enough to remember when the liberals in this country, like Keith Olbermann, thought that George Bush was, used to call him Hitler. And the worst thing, they would call him the American Taliban. And they would call him all those things because why? Because he deserved it. Because he's a war criminal who lied us into a war and then invented a torture program. And then let all those people in New Orleans die. I mean, it just one disaster after another. George Bush didn't have an accomplishment in 8 years of his presidency. There was no accomplishment, and everyone hated him. They hated him so much. The next guy we elected was a black guy with a Muslim name. That was 7 years after 9/11. They elected a black guy with a Muslim name. That's how much they hated George Bush. And now they got somebody else to hate. They hate Donald Trump now, so now they love George Bush. But isn't this interesting that the shit libs, they hated Ralph Nader. They hate Ralph Nader because he gave us George Bush. But now they love George Bush, but they still hate Ralph Nader. You see what I'm talking about? Do you see how that's all propaganda and mind manipulation? Do you see that's what that is? That's exactly what that is. So here is, there's got to be a punchline for that setup. I got to write a punchline for that. That they used to hate Ralph Nader because he gave us George Bush. Now they all love George Bush, but they still hate Ralph Nader. That doesn't make, there's got to be a punchline there. Ron, get on it.
Seatbelts are too tight?
What? Oh, maybe their seatbelts are too tight and it's cutting off the circulation to their brain, and Ralph Nader has nobody to blame but himself. There's the joke. Is that the joke? Because, we got seatbelts because of Ralph Nader, right? Everybody knows. Does everybody know that in the audience? Maybe the kiddies out there don't know that. The kids on you. When I say kids, I mean the 40-year-olds that watch the show. Okay, so here's George Bush. You want to hear some of his horrible speech? 9/11. By the year 20-year anniversary, 9/11. 20.
Let this guy talk.
And they let this guy talk, who then took that horrible tragedy and manipulated us into invading a country that had nothing to do with it and lied us into that war and then tortured people to cover that up. So 20 years. And, people still, you mentioned 9/11. My uncle still goes crazy. He can get upset like that. You know who gets the most upset about 9/11 still? Iraqis. Okay, let's listen.
As a nation, our adjustments have been profound. Many Americans struggled.
Yeah, as a nation, our adjustments have been profound. Somehow we got even shittier as a country after 9/11. Isn't that something?
As a nation, our adjustments have been profound. Many Americans struggled to understand why an enemy would hate us with such zeal.
I could give you a bunch of reasons why most of the world hates us, George. Maybe it's because we just bombed their country and killed 1 million people in it. You ever think about that? You ever think about that? Maybe we put sanctions on Iraq that killed 500,000 children that Madeleine Albright said was worth it. We killed 500,000 children over there. Do you think that was worth it, George? You have no idea why they hate us? I can tell you why I hate you. It's probably the same reason why they hate you.
The security measures incorporated into our lives are both...
We're bombing the whole world for no reason. Why do they hate us? What's wrong with them? I bet it's their religion. Bill Maher, is it their religion? I bet it's their religion. Animals. That's a primitive religion.
Sources of comfort and reminders of our vulnerability. And we have seen growing evidence that the dangers to our country can come not only across borders, but from violence that gathers within.
Oh, yes, Mr. President. Oh, please tell us about the violent extremists at home, Mr. Violent Extremist at home. This guy's a mass murdering war criminal. His father, mass murdering war criminal. His mother gave birth to a mass murdering war criminal and married a mass murdering war criminal. Isn't that funny? Would you like to jump in on this, Nick? I'm here with Nick Cruz from the Fred Hampton leftists. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I just been laughing because it showed the moral depravity of the liberal class that they rehabilitate this monster. I don't know if you saw, but there was a Washington Post article. It was a pen article about how George Bush reminds us that Republicans used to believe in democracy. Meanwhile, in reality, George Bush had his brother literally rigged the election in Florida.
That's right.
So, these people literally forget about history that happened in my lifetime. These people rehabilitate George Bush, and he created the system that we have right now. Like, he literally had a torture program, and they think that he somehow has the moral high ground over Donald Trump. This guy has the moral high ground over nobody in human history. So you have Bill Maher, like you mentioned. He always want to blame and attack Islam. Meanwhile, George Bush, he said that he invaded Iraq because his Christian God told him to do it. And that invasion led to the death and displacement of millions of people. But Shitlib's going to fear monger over other religions because they love to divide and conquer. The problem is imperialism, not these minor spats over religion.
Okay, he's got more to this speech.
There is little cultural overlap between violent extremists abroad and violent extremists at home.
Jesus Christ.
But in their disdain for pluralism, in their disregard for human life, in their determination to defile national symbols, they are children of the same foul spirit, and it is our continuing duty to confront them.
If we wanted to take his advice, we'd throw him in jail. That's just a fact. Anyway, here we go. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have killed at least 500,000 people, according to a new poll that breaks down the toll. I wonder why they hate us. Here we go.
Former President George W. Bush calling on Americans to confront violent extremists at home.
Former President George W. Bush, John, used his speech yesterday to call out domestic extremists. I thought this was a really notable moment.
The fact that he did it was a beautifully written speech.
President George W. Bush's truly incredible speech.
So he dunked on Trumpers. And that's what everybody's... George Bush is a mass murdering war criminal who organized a torture program. He is the moral superior of no one. In fact, no one is the moral inferior of George Bush. He's as bad. He's worse than Charlie Manson. He's got a much bigger kill list than Charlie Manson. George Bush is a homicidal maniac and should be in The Hague. But this is what corporate shitlibs do. They sit around and praise a guy like that because it's a dunk on Donald Trump. It's a dunk on the Republican they currently hate. They used to hate George Bush just as much as they hate Donald Trump. Believe me, I was alive back then. Keith Olbermann built MSNBC on the backs of hating George Bush. Here's Bill Clinton. Thank you, my friend, for your powerful and much-needed words in this difficult day. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. There you go. George W. Bush stole the election from his vice president, and he doesn't give a shit. They stole the election from Al Gore. Every recount the New York Times ever did, Al Gore won Florida. They don't give a shit. He doesn't care. Okay. Here's Rob Reiner. Oh, no. Rob Reiner, the biggest millionaire shitlib in California. In George W. Bush's speech today, he talked about the America he knew, one of compassion for Muslims and immigrants. When in the fuck have we ever had compassion for immigrants in this goddamn country? And when have we ever had compassion for Muslims? You know George Bush bombed the shit out of Muslims, Rob? Do you know that? You know Bill Clinton killed 500,000 Muslim children? Do you know Barack Obama dropped more bombs on Muslims than George Bush did? Do you know that George Bush started a torture program? Who do you think he tortured? Do you think he tortured Christians? Do You think he tortured Jewish people? Who do you think that they tortured? Sadly, it's an America we no longer have. We never had it, Rob. You're making things up because you have Trump derangement syndrome and Trump lives in your shadow. You are Donald Trump in your shadow, and that's why it comes out like this. That's why you end up loving a mass-murdering, psychopathic, homicidal maniac who's also a war criminal who organized a torture program, and you hold him up to be some kind of saint, like he's Gandhi. Sadly, it's an America we no longer have. Now the terror comes from within. Listen, folks, I said this when we found out we were doing a torture program, that whatever we do to people overseas, we're going to eventually do it to people back here. And we are doing it. We've militarized our police. We're now gassing our own people on the regular. We must all come together again to stand up to ignorance and bigotry. Who is all? You mean half the country, right? Who is all? You don't mean people who voted for Trump, which was, I think, 70 million people. You don't mean that, right? You don't mean half the country. And by the way, George W. Bush, do you know that he lobbied the senators to make sure Kavanaugh got confirmed? You know that, right? You know that George Bush made phone calls to make sure Kavanaugh got confirmed. You know that, right? But I'm more responsible for the Supreme Court than George Bush is, apparently. As president, by the way, I just want to ask Rob Reiner, did you talk to any Muslims or immigrants before you wrote that tweet? Nick, you think Rob Reiner talked to any Muslims or immigrants before he wrote that tweet?
They don't care. They only care about their suburbanite communities. Those are the only communities that actually care and fight for. They don't care about state violence. And it's very obvious why the liberals want to rehabilitate George Bush Jr. because they don't want war crimes to be something that society ostracizes you for. They don't want you to be judged for committing war crimes because they had the same foreign policy. George Bush created ICE. Democrats built upon it. Joe Biden is funding ICE more. Now, both sides, they use the culture war to distract the fact that they believe in the same bullshit for the most part. They both believe in giant police budgets. They both believe in the prison industrial complex. They all support the genocide in Palestine. So they don't have any real difference between them. So they use the culture war to divide and conquer people. But they actually believe in the same thing. So when they rehabilitate George Bush, that means they don't want to be complicit in the crimes that they support, that George Bush did, like Nancy Pelosi, for example, and the foreign policy that they are continuing to this day.
Anna Navarro, she tweeted out, everybody's favorite maniac who's now embraced by the Democrats because she hates Trump. As president, George Bush was not exactly known for his eloquence, but today he sure showed up.
Oh. This
is a beautiful and poignant speech reminding us of what makes us America. Hope you consider taking the time to listen to it. Hey, it's just, I don't know what the... here it is. Here's the guy who wants me banned from all social media because he's that kind of a progressive, meaning a fascist. And there it is. Even George W. Bush now recognizes Trump. His supporters and those who directly participated in the 1-6 coup attempt are terrorists, surely as the 9/11 ones were. I'll say it again. Trump damaged America in a way bin Laden only dreamed of. Hey, now, could someone show Keith Olbermann a picture of George Bush fishing with Putin and watch his head fucking explode? Could we do that? Could someone please do that? George W. Bush is a war criminal. That's from Roots Action. Just so you know, Keith, the guy you're loving here is not half as bad as Donald Trump. You know how many people he killed? Put it up against how many people Donald Trump killed. Hey, guess what? Do you know how many torture programs he created? How many torture programs did Trump create? Again, they're all maniacs. They're all horrible people. Trump is a horrible fucking con man. War criminal. George Bush, a worse war criminal than Donald Trump. Worse. And a worse president. Would you agree with that, Nick?
You know what's hilarious? Like, when you ask Democrats how they feel about like Putin, for example, they believe Putin is the worst person of all time. Liberals really believe that Putin killed more people than George Bush Jr. and Barack Obama. They don't. They really believe that. They really believe that he's imprisoning more people than them. We imprison 1/4 of the world's prison population. No one commits more crime against humanity than we do. But if you ask how they feel about Maduro or Putin, they pretend they are tyrants. But there is no bigger tyrant in the world than the United States president. Period.
There's no bigger terrorists organization. I love this. Everyone knows that Bush is a war criminal, but Dems made sure that he'd never face justice for his crimes. Dem elites love Bush. That's exactly right. By the way, they're all war criminals. None of them are not. They all are. Barack Obama, his drone program killed 90% innocent civilians. Joe Biden just killed 10 innocent people, an aid worker in Afghanistan. They followed him for 12 hours and they blew him up with 10 other people. They're all war. They're all war. This idea that Trump is somehow uniquely evil. They're all evil. Ironically, Trump committed the least amount of evil. Well, he only had 4 years. They all had 8. So there you go. Maybe if Trump would have had another 4 years, he could have caught up to George Bush, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton, but he didn't. I don't even. It's so easy to see the garbage that this country has become if you're not invested in one of the two parties. But if you still think one of the two parties represent you, then you're not going to see it. You're going to be caught up in the matrix, and you're going to keep voting for the people who are oppressing you. And that's where we are. People say, why did those poor people vote against their own interests when they vote Democratic? Because they do the same thing when they vote for Joe Biden. Voting for Joe Biden is a vote against your own interest unless you're a millionaire. Anything you'd like to close this segment out with, Nick?
I got nothing but the liberals that prop up George Bush. These people are ahistorical. They forget about the most recent war crimes that he's responsible for. He has created the system that led to Donald Trump in the first place.
That's right.
So it's just gross to see. But they don't really care. The whole thing they care about is the culture war, red versus blue nonsense game. They don't care about the policies. They don't care about the lives that are lost as a result of the policies that Joe Biden's continuing. I always tell people Joe Biden is just the 11th term of Ronald Reagan as far as I'm concerned, because Bill Clinton did everything that Ronald Reagan wished he would have did when it comes to deregulating Wall Street, pushing the crime bill. And you had George Bush that continued that. You had Barack Obama that continued that, and Donald Trump. The U.S. empire does not change based on who was president. That's why you had Donald Trump who pretend he was anti-war, but at the end of the day, he didn't pull out Afghanistan. He didn't de-escalate drone strikes. He actually tried to overthrow Venezuela. He was responsible for the genocide in Palestine the same way Joe Biden is. So the U.S. empire does not change between these red-blue presidents. So you guys need to stop playing the game and actually speak on the real issues. And you're not going to get that out either team, either one, Democrats or Republicans.
I just got a text from Jim Earl, who reminds me that I keep saying that Bill Clinton was responsible for 500,000 deaths of children, but we've killed way more people than that in the Middle East. Jim reminds me it could be more like 4 million deaths from direct killing and the long-term impact. According to Physicians for Social Responsibility, measuring Western intervention in Iraq and Afghanistan since 1990s. And this study is now 5 years old, and they said 5 years ago that we're responsible for more like 4 million deaths. I wonder why, and George Bush is like, why would they hate us? We killed 4 million people over there. Do you know how the hatred we have for them because they killed 3,000 people? Well, just multiply that by, 3 million or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a math surgeon. But now you know. Now you know the rest of the story. Nobody at CNN would mention, like nobody would, he would hear, why would they hate us so much? And nobody would go, well, I think we all know why they hate us. Like, no, there's like, come on. But no, they all just pretend. Hey, we're going to be at Harlow's in Sacramento, October 3rd. We just added another show, 4 p.m. on October 3rd. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for tickets. And we're adding stand-up dates, too, all over the country. We're going to be doing a lot of stand-up shows. So make sure you check out jimmydorecomedy.com for all our shows.